Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors, and if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one starts like this. I grew up next to a family who was really nice. Their grandparents gave them that house and it was perfect, always made our house and lawn look like crap. The kid in the family was 4 years older than me, very nice, good in school and whatnot. He started getting into drugs and alcohol around 14, had a kid and then another and another. The grandfather who gave them the house died and the house then started getting worse. Not as much lawn mowing or keep up. Old cars started to gather in the yard. If it got stuck, it would just stay there forever. The woman of the house died and then the man. So it was just a 24-year-old, immature, 3 offspring kid living there with his drugged out, deadbeat girlfriend. We look over one day and the gas meter from their yard is gone. This is winter in Ohio and it can get cold here. Then a couple weeks later, one night we look over and there's not a single light on at all. The electricity had been shut off as well. A for sale sign showed up in the front yard for a single day and then the house went empty and was foreclosed on by the bank. Caution tape wrapped around the entire house. 6 months later, some US Marshals showed up at my door looking for the guy. They surrounded the house next door and mine. I told them I didn't know where he was and they left. I heard later that they found him and he went to jail for a year. There the house sat, falling apart with caution tape wrapped around it. When someone finally purchased it from the bank, the basement had 6 feet of water in it, every piece of drywall and interior wall, and even some floor joists had to be removed and replaced. In 2012, the house was completely redone on the inside and looks amazing. They are now the nicest people. And the next one, my neighbor at my house had OCD for sure. He would mow and leaf blow his yard every single day. If it rained, the second it stopped, he would go out there and mow and leaf blow. He would leaf blow his roof and then he would leaf blow his cars and then wash his cars. Every day, he either had OCD or hated his wife. He never talked or waved to anyone either. Strange dude. The neighborhood kids did super glue a leaf to his driveway. I wish I was there to see his reaction. Added, just to add a bit to clarify, it wasn't like this guy was obsessed with his lawn. In fact, it really was not all that nice. He would actually mow it every day. I have seen people always outside gardening and stuff, but he just mowed and leaf blew every day. There had to be days where the blade of the lawn mower did not even touch the grass. He would leaf blow the yard despite nothing being on the lawn. It would seriously have been faster for him to just walk over and grab the 4 or 5 leaves that would be on his yard on a given day. My family just always dealt with it. It is his yard, he has a right to do whatever he wanted on it, but my god, the sound of his leaf blower would just drone on forever. My next door neighbor blew a gasket on a Sunday morning and walked over and yelled at him one day. He stopped and did his daily blow and mow in the afternoon. And the next neighbor story, I got this. Having just bought our house at the height of the market, the twin house next door could not sell. So the developer rented it to 2 men in their 30s not long after we moved in. That first Saturday was a full-on raging party, which was irritating at 3 in the morning. I went over to ask them to lower the volume. They were too drunk to even hear me. There must have been 50 people there and on the deck right under our window. I talked to them the next morning. They were dismissively apologetic. That was the first party. Parties at least 4 times a week, always late, always loud, partiers parking my driveway, sitting on my lawn, porch, bottles thrown over my yard, fights in and around my property. Eventually, these 2 guys subleased their house to 6 more guys who were primarily laborers during the day and full-on drunks at night. Guys that would never grow up and answered to no one. Despite my attempts to be peaceful, it was not gonna happen. It became clear that I was the one who was calling the police, so they began to retaliate, culminating in a rabbit being taken apart on my porch. I knew it was them as the snow prints led straight to their house. I became increasingly desperate as this was not going to end. I enlisted the help of the neighbors who would call the police, but mostly it was me who called at least 3 times a night. I set up video cameras to record their antics. One night they had a film crew set up in that house, apparently filming a movie, complete with sound equipment, lighting, cables and all strewn about my property and driveway well until 2 AM in the morning. One night a drunk punk jumped over our fence and I chased him out with a baseball bat. From that point forward, I was at war. I came close to physical fights on 3 separate occasions. Eventually I wrote letters to the alderman and to the developer. I threatened to hold the developer responsible for all that happened there. I enlisted the help of the community relations police officer who went to the developer and noted all of the calls and told them they were gonna get a citation from the city, a very expensive one. The boneheads moved out the next day. And yeah, ripe stars, that is how quickly situations can change once you involve the police. Have you ever had to call the police on one of your neighbors? And if so, what happened? Please let us know in the comments, and while you're at it, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you wish to support me. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one, am I the a-hole for not allowing people to access a swimming hole that has been used for generations but is on our property? My husband and I began looking at getting away from the city a few years ago. We had a small checklist. Husband wanted permanent running water, I wanted a house. We looked at many properties before we stumbled across this one by a fluke. It has 2 permanent creeks and a small house and is absolutely perfect. The property runs adjacent to a national park, so it will always remain secluded. We both instantly fell in love, and even though it was quite out of our budget, our parents both loved it as well and helped us purchase it. The property itself is almost 100 acres and is the very last house on the dirt road. Also, I should mention that the seller of the property was an elderly man who only used this place as a weekender and owned his permanent home in the city. One of the main things that drew us to this place is the permanent creeks. They are full of swimming holes, and one of the best ones even had a rope tied to the tree. Real estate agents said that a few local kids had used it because previous owners were never there and didn't mind. The road turns into an easement to get to the national park entrance, and the creek line is the boundary of our property to the national park. The swimming hole in question is about midway between the easement and our house. Over the years, this swimming hole has become well known to the locals, and there is a path that has been made to get to this swimming hole that is on our property. We certainly didn't like the idea of strangers walking so near the house, so husband puts up a wire fence across the path and a no trespassing sign. Within days of putting it up, a female neighbor walks around the fence and to our house to yell at us, saying that she's been walking this path and swimming for 30 years. We politely tell her that it is private property, and just because the old owners did not mind doesn't mean we do as well. Less than a week after this incident, somebody posts about the fence in our local suburb Facebook group, and while many people were angry, many understood as well. We aren't asking people to not swim, we don't own the water, we are just asking people to go to the national park site to access the swimming hole, because we do own right up to the water's edge. However, about another week later, our sign is stolen and the wire fence is cut. We have made it very clear what our reasoning is. We purchased this property for privacy, and so far people are more invasive than if we had purchased in the city. Just today I was out mowing, we have not replaced the sign or fence yet, and 3 girls come walking from this path and walk directly across the front paddock, essentially our front yard. Am I the a-hole for wanting to protect my privacy? Didn't really want to say this, but I am 26 female and my husband works away for 2 weeks at a time and there is no phone reception at all. Safety is a valid concern. We haven't sought any legal advice and I doubt we will. We will try a few more peaceful resolves, aka signs, clearing a new path on the other side and planting plants on our own path, and if nothing works then that's it. They win. It is not a war I am willing to wage because I do actually want to continue living here. And yeah guys, I am curious, do you think that OP is the a-hole in the story for wanting to protect her and her family's privacy? Let us know in the comments. Personally, I would say that OP is definitely not the a-hole, because people don't really have the right to trespass simply because they have done it for like 10 or 20 years. That does not make it right. Anyway, the next story starts like this. My first apartment was great until these two pricks arrived that thought they owned the building. The guy worked for a produce place and didn't have a car, but his spot was beside mine. He would usually let his visitors use it once in a while, didn't bother me. He then started parking on one of the produce store's commercial cube vans, similar to a U-Haul 17-footer van, in his spot, which is illegal in my city enforced by a bylaw. They have to park on the side of the road. This means I have no room to both park and get in/out of my car, all depending on when he gets back. I was trying to be friendly to him and gave him a nice note on his windscreen that asks to be more considerate and park on the road instead, not my words, and was very diplomatic while writing it up, and he ignores it. Weeks go by and I had enough. A few scrapes on my car, I didn't really care because my car was a POS, but still made me start parking on the road instead, so I gave up and called the city to ticket and tow it away. They arrive and he freaks out like he didn't do anything wrong. His bill comes up to about $300 and he starts calling me an idiot and a baby for complaining. He also took a swing at me. The tow truck driver called the police and arrested him for disorderly conduct, and I got the super to evict him. Me and some roommates had a neighbor, an old lady and her son who was in his 40s probably. Honestly, we never did anything, that we know of, to initially get on their bad side. We'd always be sitting on our front porch drinking beers, and when the son would come home from work, he would always do the same thing. He wouldn't look at us, he would just say stuff in this creepy, grumbling voice like, "I'm going to cut your dicks off, I'll run you over with my car." This was just as he was walking into his house, and he would always quickly shut the door. He called the cops on our dog for being out in the yard, dog at large, at least 6 times. His mom was once raking the leaves in her yard. She raked them into a giant pile next to the fence and then picked them up and threw them over the fence into our yard. Seriously, the same amount of effort would have put the leaves into a bag. But here's the coup de grace. They were having a yard sale, so we thought we would F with them, thinking they would behave themselves with customers around. We sat on our porch and just watched all day. The son was getting really aggravated. He would periodically say stuff like, "What are you dipshits looking at?" To which we would say stuff like, "What are you going to tell your mom on us?" Admittedly childish, but we were sick of this dude. Sick of hearing his stuff, sick of dealing with the cops every other week. A few hours go by and he pulls a gun out and points it at us. My buddy closest to the door ducks inside and calls the cops. Me and my other roommates are on the verge of crapping our pants, totally frozen. The 2 or 3 old ladies browsing their crappy wares are totally shocked, speechless, petrified. He is yelling a bunch of stuff I don't remember. He goes back inside in a huff. We run into the house, lock the doors and wait for the cops. He got arrested, never saw him again, moved the F out of that neighborhood ASAP. And the next one, my neighbor is such a raging dickhead that he gave himself a stroke. My sister and I bought a house, and on the day we moved in, he approached my sister. I was driving the U-Haul and wasn't there yet, and warned her that unless we mowed our lawn, we would be fined. No, welcome to the neighborhood, or hi, my name is John. Just a demand that we mow our lawn before we even move a single item of furniture into the new house. For the first 2 years we lived here, he would constantly yell at his wife and kids. I never heard anything violent, but they could never live up to his damn standards. Like, if they were out raking leaves, he would barge out barking, "No, you're doing that wrong." Called the cops for anything and everything except valid reasons. Example, he called them on our other neighbor when he painted a desk in his backyard complaining about fumes. From 2 doors down, I was closer and there were no fumes. He tried to yell at me when I mowed my lawn and apparently didn't line up our properties perfectly and cut a few inches, literally, into his yard. I put the kibosh on that pretty quick though. My sister's indoor cat got out one evening and ran off in a panic once it was outside. We saw it go into his bushes, so we knocked on his door and asked permission to go and fetch the cat from his yard. He refused and told us the cat was not in his bushes even after we told him we saw her run in there. Karma finally got him though. Apparently he was yelling one day and had a stroke. Now he hobbles around with a cane and cannot yell. I tried to feel sorry for him because his life obviously didn't turn out the way he hoped, but I really believe the common denominator in all this was his own damn attitude. On a positive note, I really think his wife and kids are happier now. And the last one. About 8 years back, my family and I lived in a nice neighborhood next to some douchebag old man. We had 2 dogs, a rescued collie and a Shetland sheepdog. We would put the dogs outside when we were gone, and the Sheltie would occasionally bark at birds and anything, I guess, just doing what normal dogs do. And by the way guys, a little trigger warning for this story, because there is some animal cruelty coming up. So in case you are sensitive to that, and I know many of my ripe stars are, then maybe it is better to turn off the video now. Anyway, this old bag left letters on our porch saying we needed to shut our dog up, etc., so we started leaving them inside during the day. But I guess he would still hear her barking from in the house. It seemed obvious to me that dogs do bark and it shouldn't be a big deal. She wasn't loud or anything, just little yips. One day we left them out and came home to find our yard full of nails that were sunk into the grass. That old guy shot at our dogs with a nail gun, hitting them in several places. My dad went over there and threatened to beat his ass, and shortly after, the old man moved away. We moved out of state a few years back and now we have another dickbag old man as a neighbor. He always walks with his damn Yorkies around the neighborhood and lets them crap all over people's yards and doesn't clean it up. I have a 12-year-old lab with hip dysplasia, and one day I picked her up and took her outside to lay in the grass and sunshine and sat there with her on the ground so she could enjoy the beautiful day. She has trouble walking and slowly hobbles around. He walked by with his stupid dog and my dog got up and wobbled over there to sniff them and say hi, tail wagging 100 miles per hour. She has never been aggressive or growled in her life, and she loves to mother other dogs. He kicked my dog onto the ground, picked him up and yelled at me to keep my dog on a leash so he doesn't harm anyone anymore. Mind you, this dude had his dogs in my yard and hurt my dog in my own yard. I'm a girl, I was 15 at the time, and I decked that dude right in the face and told him if he brought his Yorkies into my yard again, I would punt them into the next county. I have never harmed an animal, but the threat did the trick. And ripe stars, unfortunately we have already reached the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content. However, if you cannot wait for more ripe content, then I suggest you head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where you can find more exclusive Reddit content read by me. Patreon subscriptions start at just $1 per month, and for $1 your name will show up at the end of each of my new videos. However, if you are willing to spend $3 per month, you will get access to more than 50 exclusive Reddit videos, mostly just no mother-in-law stories. However, please understand, I don't want to pressure anyone into spending money, because I am already incredibly grateful that you watch my videos every single day. Thank you so much for your daily support, it really means the world to me, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for the next video.